There are two gold medals that may be the most forgotten in American Olympic history. Forgotten because they were won nearly a century ago, in 1920 and 1924, and because they were won in the sport of rugby, which today is not much more than a blip on this country's national sports radar. And forgotten because they were the last gold medals ever won in rugby. The sport was dropped from the Olympics right after the 1924 Games. Rugby is making an Olympic comeback this summer in Rio after 92 years, with a streamlined version of the game known as sevens. Just 7 players aside rather than the traditional 15. What may surprise you is that the U.S. team has a legitimate chance to win a gold medal in rugby again.
Go, 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 go!
The U.S. men's rugby team may have some of the best athletes in America. It definitely has the greatest variety.
Well, yeah, push it out a bit wider. Pinky, you got 4.
Madison Hughes grew up in England, played rugby at Dartmouth, and joined Team USA while still an undergraduate.
Hughes, the captain!
Now he's the captain, at just 23 years old and just 5'9".
We need match pace, lots of talk, that communication that helps us build it, yeah?
He's just a guy that was naturally born to be a leader.
Zach Test played football at the University of Oregon.
Zach Test takes it to the blind side.
He's now one of the U.S. rugby team's all-time leading scorers. Carlin Isles just missed making the 2012 Olympics as a sprinter.
Here's Isles trying to get on the outside.
Just look at him go.
Carlin Isles wins it by miles.
In rugby, he found another sport where he could fulfill his Olympic dream.
I mean, you're a sprinter, and then you look online and you go, rugby. How did you get to rugby?
I was watching film and I saw Zach Test running this like 80-meter try.
Back to Test. Zach Test. Gap opened up.
And I was like, oh man, this is pretty sweet.
Where he's come from when he first joined the team to where he is now, I mean, just leaps and bounds. I mean, he's a world-class winger now.
Here's the jet shoes of Carlin Isles.
When he first came on, he was just a skinny little sprinter.
He's immensely quick.
Mike Friday is head coach of the American team. When you say quick, how quick?
He's quicker than Usain Bolt.
Quicker than the world's fastest man?
He'll try and get on the outside of Hutchinson.
That's just for the first 20 meters, but it still makes Carlin Isles the world's fastest rugby player. And speed really matters in sevens rugby because there's so much more open space on the field.
South Africa hang tough.
The passing and the defending and playing with your teammates in interplay, that's very much like basketball. You have to be in tune with each other and know what the game plan is and execute flawlessly. And then the aggressive part where, you know, you're bringing the tackling and stealing the ball, that's more of the football part where you're being aggressive. You know, it's that man test of, you know, kind of me versus you.
And Ebner now.
Nate Ebner knows that part. He's a safety for the New England Patriots. Over 4 seasons, he's established himself as a special teams standout. Good enough to earn a new contract this year worth $2.5 million. What's surprising is that he promptly asked the Patriots for a leave of absence so he could try out for the national rugby team.
You sign a really lucrative contract, and then you go and you say, hey, by the way, there's just one thing I want to do before I...
Yeah.
And then they open the door for you, and that's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just really thankful that I have the opportunity to not only go back to that first-class organization in the Patriots, but to have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to chase a childhood dream of mine.
Reach with the fingers.
We're a big melting pot of different characters and attitudes and personalities. You know, we've got guys born in Tonga, born in Samoa, born in Cleveland, born in England.
That is a little bit of what the US is about. It's people coming together from different backgrounds and kind of trying to take the country forward. And we're trying to take our team forward.
That ball then moved in the air. That buys them time to recover.
But the team really wasn't going anywhere until Mike Friday took over as the coach in 2014.
At the time, USA Sevens were relegation material.
What does that mean?
They were deemed 14th in the world, you know, given less than 10% according to the stats of it even qualifying for the Olympics.
Oh, mate, come on, Nate.
Friday is known as a turnaround specialist in the rugby world. After transforming Kenya's national team, he brought the same discipline and tactical skill to the U.S. team.
We either move the ball quickly by passing it, or we run to the outside.
By the end of 2015, with essentially the same players, they were quickly ranked 6th in the world and qualified for Rio.
We can beat anybody on any given day.
But could they beat even the mighty All Blacks of New Zealand, the most successful team in the history of rugby? When the teams met last December, the U.S. match record was 0-28.
The US had never beaten the All Blacks before. We're playing them in Dubai.
You can feel the tension here.
As time expired, and with the U.S. trailing by just one try, the rugby equivalent of a touchdown,
Last chance now for USA.
American speedster Perry Baker grabbed the ball.
Oh, Perry Baker! Perry Baker, it's Carlin!
And that tied the game up, but we knew a tie wasn't enough for us. We had to get the win, and so time was completely expired. All that came down to was the extra point kick from right in the corner.
And that fell on your shoulders.
Fell on my shoulders, and I mean, that's why I practiced.
Madison Hughes, what an important conversion this is. It's high. Oh, he's got it!
Set!
As if to prove that that win wasn't just a fluke, the U.S. beat New Zealand again in London this May.
Round the back play again from Madison Hughes, the captain, beautiful. And guess who's on the outside? It's Perry Baker.
And did it decisively.
Now we've earned the respect of the world. Everybody fears us.
Why is that?
Because they're fearful of our power, they're fearful of our physicality, they're fearful of our speed.
And you've got speed.
We've got all three of those key attributes you need to be successful on the sevens pitch.
Get out of the way, he says.
I think we're showing the world that, you know, we're going to be a serious contender, and if you don't watch out for us, we're going to come and break down that door.
Which is pretty much what happened back in the 1920s, when Americans first won rugby gold.
It was a shock to the rugby world. No one thought these American college students had a chance.
The French national team was most shocked. They lost to the Americans in the gold medal game in Belgium in 1920, and then again in Paris in 1924. Ironically, what turned the U.S. into an early 20th century rugby force was a crisis in American football.
Actually, at the turn of the century, when there were some issues with the safety of American football, rugby really became a very popular sport on college campuses.
Bob Latham is chairman of USA Rugby. He says that President Theodore Roosevelt actually considered banning football after newspapers exposed a rash of injuries and deaths. This story reported that 19 football players had been killed in 1905 and called it a death harvest. And that's what prompted President Roosevelt to step in and say, hey, this can't happen anymore.
Something's got to change, and at least for a short period of time, Stanford and Cal dropped their football programs, and those players started playing rugby.
Those converted football players from the West Coast formed the core of the rugby team that went to Europe and won gold. They might not recognize the cut-down version of rugby that's coming back to the Olympics 92 years later.
To Hood, to the man off the bench who's Rowan Bailey, the star player.
Sevens games are so short. 2 7-minute halves with just a 2-minute break between that players are running constantly from the first to last whistle.
Baker, that's one of his best.
I don't know how we do it. Because if you watch us train, if you watch our preseason and this and that, you're going to be like, what the heck? Like, they trying to kill these people. And we got to keep going and going and going all day.
You think it'll make you a better player when you go back to the NFL?
I think I'm not going to get tired ever.
It won't just be men competing in Rio.
Yeah, Jill, you got me here?
Women's sevens rugby is also in the Olympics, and the U.S. team will be there, also with a chance to win a medal.
I think it'll be one of the talks for the Olympics. Wow, how did we not know that this sport was out there? It will inspire a lot of people, and they'll think, wow, this isn't some sandlot sport. This is a real sport with real athletes.
Tap and go, Preston!
Rugby is already growing fast in America.
You drive them off the ball, okay?
Ed Peterson is part of that growth. In 2009, the South African native helped found a youth rugby club near San Diego because he wanted his kids to learn the sport that he'd grown up with.
What percentage of the players early on were expats kids?
60% expats and 40% American that had played rugby, very few that had no exposure to it.
And today?
Probably 10-15% expats and the rest Americans. It's amazing.
Peterson's club, the Coastal Dragons, now has more than 200 boys and girls playing rugby. The youngest play a tag or touch version, while high schoolers, both boys and girls, play full speed and full contact, with everyone on the field having a chance to score. Is that important to all of you guys to be able to grab the ball and be able to run with the ball?
Oh, yeah. I think it's just the fact that you can do everything. You know, you get to run, you get to pass, you get to hit.
Have any of you come from football?
Nope.
Just like a century ago, when a safety scare in football drove players to rugby. Today's concussion crisis in football has players and parents doing the same thing again. Have you got parents coming up to you and saying, look, I'm really concerned about my kids playing football. Maybe rugby is a good alternative?
Yes, they do. But I think more is what's happening is that parents say, I really want my kid to play football, but I want him to know how to tackle safely. So can you teach him to tackle safely by playing rugby? And I say, yes, we can. I mean, it's not just me saying that. I mean, ask Pete Carroll.
As the coach of the NFL Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll drew a lot of attention in 2014 when he released an instructional video showing his team learning how to use their shoulders rather than their heads when tackling.
How we teach this system of tackling was recently inspired by those who play rugby around the world.
Whoa, what a defensive tackle.
Definitely the tackling is, from a safety standpoint, for sure, more effective. In rugby, you just don't have a helmet on, so you have to protect your head. Like, that's just the way it is.
Nate Ebner should know. He's played both games at the highest level.
Touchdown for Nate Ebner.
But there are concussions in rugby, and worldwide, there are concerns in the sport about the long-term effects of head injuries.
You tackling guys at like 230. I'm 168 pounds, you know, with no pads. So, well, you coming at me full steam and I got to tackle you?
It is a very, very physical game, and there aren't any pads. But I think that makes it safer, not less safe.
I mean, you look at a game of rugby and you say, how could it be safer? I mean, seriously, these guys are hitting each other pretty hard in a tackle.
There may be more bumps and bruises and cuts in rugby, but in terms of injuries that keep you off the playing field, I'd take my chances in rugby rather than American football.
For years since we founded the club, we were trying to recruit football players to come and play rugby, and we didn't get invited in.
Are they now coming to you?
Yes, absolutely. Now they actually see our sport. They see these players run around. They're like, why aren't you playing football? You'll be an amazing football player. So they're coming and scouting rugby now to try and recruit for football. Absolutely. And why wouldn't they? They should be.
If we win a gold medal, it's just going to explode the sport in this country. I mean, you can already see it. You know, we get asked to take pictures in airports where 5 years ago people were like, you know, what are you guys, a wrestling team or a soccer team? Now that, you know, they know who we are. You know, oh, you guys are the rugby team? Oh, you know, can we have a picture? So it's a really cool time right now.
It could get even cooler in Rio if Madison Hughes can make a few more of those last-second conversions from the corner.